The Space God Memoirs. Season 3, Episode 6. My shoulders were tense as I lowered the starship to the hangar floor, touching it down with a light tap. I loosed a deep sigh as I disconnected from the red cone's artificial mind and the cabin went dark. I allowed the Nair meditations to wash away my trepidation as I stepped through the cone's circular doorway and into the bustling central hangar. Everything seemed normal here. Ships of varying sizes and geometric shapes, coming and going, pilots in multicolored jumpsuits making their way down the conveyor belts towards their vessels. A handful of silver Nentael guardians patrolled the perimeter of the Grand Port, but no eyes drifted my way. I had just taken one of the Nair's nicer ships for a joyride, which was definitely going against several regulations, even if my intentions were relatively benign. I took one peek back at Little Red as its door merged into the hull. A stiff metallic Nentael marched right past me, electrified mace in hand, headed for the far end of the dock, not going for me. Nah, I was too good at this stealth thing. No way any of these yugs would catch me. Still, the tenseness remained. Tabalnok's message blipped in my mind.
Keph, I have discovered something. Meet me on the surface platform.
A simple message, with attached time and coordinates. Also attached was an emotion, urgency, almost panicky. That wasn't like my long-nosed supervisor. Not at all. So I hurried my steps along as I boarded the rapidly moving conveyor belt that connected the various docking areas. He wanted to meet on the surface. That suggested he needed privacy. Few of the planetoid's residents bothered going to its pockmarked, atmosphereless surface, which was mostly used for a few sensors and receiving towers. Soon I was riding the conveyor system out of the spaceport. Instead of boarding my hover disk to fly anywhere else in the city, I followed said belt system into the lower entrance of a wide cylindrical building made of dull, steely metal, joined to the spaceport. I got off the belt and stepped into a long, undecorated chamber. There, hundreds of decommissioned Nair craft waited, some half disassembled on the floor, and others hanging from the ceiling and being worked on by floating spherical automatons, who would periodically blast the broken ship with nanite beams to repair damaged components. I strolled along, head low, ignoring the robo-mechanics as I made my way deeper into the structure, towards where the monad had marked the nearest elevator shaft to the surface. Eventually, I arrived at the spot, the wall marked with a sigil. At a thought and wave of my hand, a circular doorway opened into the elevator alcove. I stepped in. The door vanished behind me. One quick mental command and I was heading for the surface walk. The faintest feeling of movement came to me as the elevator zipped down and down. Below the repair center, various maintenance chambers, computer systems, and more. I felt a sense of vertigo when the elevator's car orientation reversed, and I stopped going down and started going up towards the planetary surface. Moments later it stopped, the door opening with a rush of cool air. I stepped onto a hatched steel platform, raised over a barren stone landscape, bereft of life other than my own, the crater-covered surface of a desolate planetoid. Up above, no atmosphere blocked my view of space, where the stars of the sector shone amid the black of an alien sky. A series of walkways extended towards various smaller buildings, used for maintenance, storage, or defense. Of course, I was shielded out here, the near vacuum above blocked by a force field, an artificial atmosphere pumped through the entire area. Still, I couldn't help but feel a touch exposed. It was utterly silent, the hum of the city absent, all activity far away. According to the info sent to me via the monad, the meeting place was close. The air was still but cool across my skin as I moved down the walkways towards where Tabalnak waited. Lights blinked atop enormous poles placed along the distant horizon, sensors that received the Atra from across the sector. Last time I had met with Tabalnak under one of them. Bulb-shaped turrets were set into the ground at odd intervals to shoot down any space debris that got too close. There was something wrong here. I could feel it as a crawling upon my skin, a tightness in my gut. The Atra. There was a tenseness in the air. Closing my eyes, I beheld a trail of Atra hovering there, like some swamp gas, its particles agitated. I made sure to keep my guard up as I made the last of the turns across the interlocking walkways. At last I arrived at the meeting point, where a path led directly into a metal storage building's open entrance. I stood outside, pausing. The dim lighting cast long shadows from crates within, but I saw no hint of movement. Then I stepped inside. My eyes were first drawn to the crystalline glimmer atop some plastic crates. Then I took in the full sight, a chill running through me. That was Tabalnak, or it had been. His body lay perfectly still, arms splayed out to the sides, his 3 eyes rolled into the back of his head, his trunk-like nose limp across his torso. From the center of his bloody chest cavity grew a crystalline mass, as if it had sprouted from his heart and burst forth as a shiny white crystal, spotted with his purple blood. The Atra was even stranger here, spiraling like a whirlpool around the site of the crime, but quickly dissipating, carrying with it heaviness and a sense of panic. Scrag. From my right came a grinding sound. The shed's wall was shifting, warping, like before, under the Archon's tower. A blade thrust towards me, as if the metal of the wall had suddenly been reshaped. I reacted by instinct, using my Atra to hurl myself down just in time, the jagged sword thrusting where my neck had been. Now on my back, I rolled away, towards the open doorway, then got to my feet. I could feel my heart pumping blood to my extremities. From inside the room, the grinding noise escalated, followed by the sound of clunking footfalls. I took a quick breath in and out, visualizing a spiral-shaped form in my mind. Immediately, my heart began to slow, a sense of calm spreading through my body. Then I reached for the twist blade clipped to my belt, expanding the tiny object with a flick of my wrist, until it appeared as a short, curved sword of reflective metal. From inside the shack, a shadow spread across the floor, flickering in the unstable lighting. In moments, it came into view. Its form was something I describe as vaguely humanoid, but all angular and malformed, its body composed of connected polygons, devoid of features save for the texture of the metal wall and the concrete floor. The faceless thing turned towards where I waited, its artificial body creaking and groaning as it moved. The wall monster sprang straight at me, its motions disjointed. It was quick, but I was quicker, sidestepping as it lurched at me. I hacked my weapon at its flank. My twist blade tore through the being's exposed flesh. There was some resistance as my blade hacked past the layers of metal and stone, but nevertheless my fluid weapon was able to cut through. The shambling mass did not appear to care, my attack piercing no vitals, the abomination feeling not an ounce of pain. It swung its nearby arm down at me in reaction. I dashed forward, out of its reach, just in time, its heavy limb ringing upon the grating below. As it turned to face it again, the creature swiveled its torso to face me as well. What the scrag was this thing? Didn't look like anything natural for sure. A glance at it in the monad confirmed that. AI-directed entity. Absorber model. N642182. Restricted to military use. The absorber models were basically just programmable nanite clouds that would form bodies out of whatever was in their environment. They weren't supposed to be in use here, only against the Veer. The slice I had made in his side was already closing, as tiny metal particles from the grating below were being pulled up into it. Scrag. I flipped my twist blade once more, the liquid metal expanding out into a wide defensive form. just in time to block a heavy sword-arm strike from the mechano monster. I was forced to step backward, the absorber's strength far exceeding my own. I knew that killing it was not an option, not with weapons at least. I continued to backpedal along the metal platform as my mindless opponent hurled blow after tireless blow at me. Soon we both stood upon a wider walkway, overlooking a grand crater below, a distance away from the shack where I'd found the body. Sweat trickled down my brow, chilled by the cool surface air. My heart was starting to beat quicker. Before me, the absorber looked more metallic than a moment ago, having taken on the texture of the platform we stood upon. It swung a bladed fist at me and I ducked, and then another one which I barely parried, my blade shaking in my hands. I peeked backward. It was about 100 meters from here to the elevator I'd taken up. I pondered making a run for it and took a preemptive step back. The construct matched my movement perfectly, taking a step of its own. It then slammed me with an arm, knocking the wind out of me. I fell to the ground, grimacing in pain, my twist blade clattering away. I began to reach for it, but the monster placed a thick pawed foot upon my sternum, mashing me against the grating. Scrag, it hurt, but I dissolved the pain into a visualized pattern, sending it away. The absorber model raised one of its bladed fists above me, ready to stab down into my face. My twist blade was just a few inches out of my grasp, balanced precariously on the edge of the railing. I began to reach out to it using the Atra. It was only out of physical range. But no, I knew how I was going to do this. As the monster stood over me, its huge leg pressing painfully down on my chest, I reached into the monadic network, my mind going straight for the local environment controls, the atmospheric shield. I dove straight into it, using my soul masking to avoid any security protocols that would prevent access. As the monster raised its steely hand up, ready to pierce my skull, I turned the shield off. Immediately the pressure changed. The heat was sucked out of the area, a powerful chill coming over me. Moreover, the absorber felt lighter. With both hands grasped around its cement foot, I pushed upward, using the Atra to fasten my grip on the platform below. The monster began to float up and off me in the lowered gravity. Letting go of the remaining air in my lungs, I hurled a burst of Aychuck energy at the thing, a technique Z had shown me. The absorber tried swinging at me one more time, but it was already too far, its bulky body spinning through the air as it flailed impotently. The absorber grew smaller and smaller as it ascended, eventually becoming a tiny speck floating in the planetoid's orbit. Feeling the pressure in my lungs, unable to breathe, I mentally jumped back into the local monadic and turned the air shields on. The area depressurized again, oxygen hissing through the vents. I at last took a breath. Standing to my feet, I felt the blood rushing to my head, my body shaking. I leaned against the nearby railing, taking a moment to recenter myself, gazing out over the crater-covered landscape of the planetoid's surface, the stars glimmering coldly above. Someone had just tried to kill me. That thing was a weapon, a Nyar weapon. My mind wanted to run through a list of possible suspects, but in truth I was clueless. After the explosion at the facility and the fake holographic suspect, the weirdness with the Archon, this was definitely an escalation. A murder and an attempted murder, which was really weird in a society of body-jumping immortals. I again visualized a calming geometry in my mind, feeling my heartbeat slowing back to normal, and I stood fully up. Back in the storage chamber, I was greeted by a metallic glimmer covering Tabalnuk's body, a cloud of cleaning nanites, like the ones that removed all the trash here. They shimmered in the artificial light as they massed over the body, a whirring sound in the air. Before I could consider how to stop them, they began to recede, and in seconds they had all descended through the floor, leaving nothing of the bloody corpse that had lain there moments ago. What remained was a foot-wide crystal of ovoid shape, a cloudy white, now cleaned of his blood, the very rock that had somehow sprouted from his carcass, the likely cause of death. The thing was aglow with a weird Atra, the particles moving in steady patterns across its surface. Some kind of tech, I figured, but the monad didn't offer me any data on it. The wall on my left, where the absorber had emerged, was split by a roughly humanoid gap, its materials taken by the construct that now floated up there in space. No other clues so far as I could tell. I wondered if the monster had been what discorporated Tabalnak, or had it just been left after the fact as a trap for whoever found him. Whatever these people were up to, whoever they were, they'd probably guessed someone was going after them, even if they didn't know it was me. Now that their bot was launched into orbit, they'd know for sure, and they'd step things up a notch. If I was careful, this would be my chance to finally bring them into the open. I felt strangely alive, strangely interested. When all this Dugga crap began, I didn't really care. Just going through the motions, just doing my job. An hour ago, I had been tempted to fly away, to leave the Nayar behind. But now I could start to see that this was all connected. The explosion, the Archon's failure to wake, those two cryptic sigils, and that unnamed other self had told me that it was all related to me somehow. I leaned down towards the egg-shaped crystal, moving my hand within a few inches of its surface. There was a tingle upon my palm as I kept it there, gentle and almost electrical, the caress of Atra from within. I was hesitant to touch it, this weird, unidentified item that had once been inside someone's corpse. Maybe it was dangerous, or even a trap. But scrag it, this was the best clue I had. I lowered my hand and placed it upon the crystal's surface. Warmth, but nothing more. With my other hand, I reached for an item latched to my jumpsuit's belt. A tiny little band. A flick of my wrist and it expanded out into a flexible black sack. In seconds, the weird corpse crystal was inside, and it was hefted over my shoulder. I took a final glance around the room to make sure I didn't miss anything. Then I turned around and began heading back down the halls, towards the elevator leading to the interior of Kucingkecil. I was done here, but it felt like my mission was just getting started. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Space God Memoirs. Space God is written, performed, and produced by A.M. Arctos. Original musical score by Alpha Colors. Various sound effects created by Industrial Strength Records Incorporated. Please support this podcast by following, rating, and sharing on your favorite social media site. For further info on Space God, its creator, and various other opinions, musings, and thoughts, go to www.spacegodmemoirs.com or follow me on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. If you enjoyed the Space God Memoirs, please consider supporting us by becoming a patron. Check out the Patreon link in our description to learn more.